Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex. Normally, my co-host Anthony Rivardo would be here, but today he's having some technical issues. His computer battery died. It seems like even when you do have a Disney Gold membership, troubles arise in your life. So good luck to Anthony with his computer problems, but at least he has a Gold membership, had a great time at Disney from what I've heard. So we'll catch him on the next episode, of course. But today we're going to be breaking down some edge rushers from free agency for the Giants, what to expect from them, maybe some cheaper deals and good contracts that we could look into. But before we do that, I do want to give you my joke of the day. This one's a little lengthy, so bear with me. Okay. On the first day of school, a first grade teacher explains to her class that she is a Philadelphia Eagles fan. She asks her students to raise their hands if they too are Eagles fans. Wanting to impress their teacher, everyone in the class raises their hand except for one little girl. The teacher looks at the girl with a surprise. "Janie, why didn't you raise your hand?" "Because I'm not an Eagles fan," she replied. The teacher, still shocked, asked, "Well, if you're not an Eagles fan, then what are you a fan of?" "I'm a Giants fan, and I'm proud of it," Janie replied. The teacher could not believe her ears. "Janie, please tell us why you are a Giants fan." "Because my mom is a Giants fan, my dad is a Giants fan, so I'm a Giants fan too." "Well said, Janie, well said." "Well," said the teacher in an obviously annoyed tone, "that is no reason for you to be a Giants fan. You don't have to be just like your parents all the time." "What if your mom was an idiot and your dad was a moron? Then what would you be then?" "Then," Janie said, "I'd be an Eagles fan." Haha. Lots a lot better when Anthony's here to cringe or slightly laugh at my jokes, but I thought that was a pretty funny one. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that to start off this video. But as I mentioned before, we're going to be breaking down two edge rushers. I wrote an article today about this, and I kind of wanted to go through with you guys, see what you guys think. Maybe you can present some other options on the YouTube page in the comments section. Of course, if you're listening to this audio via Spotify or iTunes, go over to the YouTube channel, subscribe. We really appreciate all the support there. Do some really, really hard work that goes into it. And we appreciate the comments. So we'd love to hear from you and what you think about these edge rushers. But there's two guys that I have in mind today that I want to break down. And by no means does this mean that I actually feel the Giants should sign these two players. More or less two options that they could consider this offseason. And I'm going to give you a little insight into them and why it could be a good move. I'm going to advocate for and against. Just like a good unbiased person should do, for and against. But the first one I want to dive into is Debian Cloudy. This is a name that popped up for the Giants last year. He's a guy that's been injured consistently, over the past few seasons, and has struggled to really assert himself after being the number one overall pick a few years ago. But he is one of those guys that has the physical talent, right? That his nickname's actually Doo-Doo. Not exactly sure why. Very interesting there. But a 6'5", 255-pound pass rusher and really an outside linebacker who can also play down lineman. Very, very talented player with incredible tangible traits. The problem is he's just always injured. So this past season, he only played in about 9 games, and then he suffered a meniscus injury, which kept him out for the remainder. So that's kind of the issue with Debian Cloudy, is that he doesn't remain healthy. He has had a couple years where he stayed relatively healthy, like let's say 2016 he was a Pro Bowler, played 14 games, 2017 a Pro Bowler, played 16 games, and then 2018 he played 15 games, another Pro Bowl caliber season for him. He's played outside linebacker a ton. And if you're not familiar with the Giants, I do play a lot of 3-4 under Patrick Graham's scheme. So this is something that, the Giants like to do. They like to use those 3 big interior pass rushers and then have 2 outside linebackers that complement them, which is why, people like Dalvin Tomlinson and Leonard Williams are super important to this system and scheme, because their entire goal is to push the interior pressure, put pressure on those guards and centers for different teams, and collapse the pocket. That's the primary goal here, is to just collapse the pocket and then allow those outside linebackers to win 1v1 battles versus the tackles. It also makes it very, very effective for them when they're utilizing stunts and specific pass rush moves to create confusion in the trenches. It works really well when there's young offensive linemen present, which is really a big reason why the Giants have struggled in recent years against stunts. That's a word you hear that kind of bubbles to the surface. The Giants really struggle with stunts because they have so much youth there, and it really takes a lot of timing, chemistry with your partner, whether it's a tackle or guard, to effectively shut down stunts. But that's a guy. Jadeveon Clowney is one of those really, really talented pass rushers who would add plenty of value to the Giants, and he could come on a relatively cheap deal. We know what he's capable of doing. We know he's a capable player that has elite tangible traits. It's the health that continues to be a major problem. He signed with the Tennessee Titans this year on a 1-year, $12.7 million deal. It really was 1 year, $13 million with a signing bonus of $6.25 million. Guaranteed $11.5 million at signing. So he really got his full pretty much the full contract guaranteed despite injury, and he missed more than half the season. The Titans are playing on Sunday afternoon, so he's missing that game, of course, due to injury. Now, that kind of opens up an opportunity for the Giants because Clowney was hoping, big bounce back year, prove it deal, sign a long-term contract. He's only 27 years old, so he's heading into his 28-year-old season. This would be, let's see, his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 8th season in the NFL next year. I think, the Giants might be able to look at him and say, hey, he's a proven guy. He has 3 Pro Bowls to his name. He has had some really good success in the past. He's capable of playing a down lineman and outside linebacker and can really, really stop the run at a high level, which is what Patrick Graham and this defense, Joe Judge, this is what they harp themselves on now. Dave Gettleman getting those big bodies and stopping the run. That's the number one goal for this Giants defense, always has been, and it continues to be. So I really like Jadeveon Clowney as a player. Again, the health is my primary point of concern when it comes to Clowney. But, I'll read you his statistics from this past year. He didn't really have a great season by any means. So as I continue to say this, keep in mind, he could be a guy that the Giants could sign to a 1-year prove-it deal super cheap. We're talking like $5 to $7 million for one season cheap because he didn't have a sack this year. He had 19 combined tackles, 6 quarterback hits, 4 tackles for a loss. He had a forced fumble and a couple passes defended, 4 passes defended. And that's kind of the reality of what he's capable of doing. Like, in the past, we've seen him 9.5 sacks in 2017, 9 sacks. He stops the run really, really well. 21 quarterback hits, 2 consecutive seasons between 2017 and 18. The stats are there. You can see the production on the field. The problem is he's fallen off the past 2 seasons, and he's trying to do these 1-year deals to hit big. Get a big season, then turn that into a multi-year deal. The problem is not healthy. So the Giants could look at him and say, he's coming off an injured meniscus. He didn't really play much this year. Not much production. Didn't have a single sack. There's no way any team's going to take a gamble on him for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So the Giants could look at him and say, hey, we'll give you an opportunity with one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, and Patrick Graham, a guy that changed the course of this offense in one offseason. And if you didn't know now, if you didn't know then, now you know how capable Graham is of leading this defense. And what I mean by that is under James Bettcher in 2019, the defense averaged, I think, 28.3 points per game allowed. And they decreased that to 22.3 points per game allowed. So keep in mind, this defense is incredibly talented. They have meshed very, very efficiently, and Patrick Graham is dialing up some impressive coverages and schemes to confuse veteran quarterbacks like Russell Wilson. We saw him do some really good things against Tom Brady earlier on in the season, and I think they just really need some time to mesh. Like with Xavier McKinney making that comeback, Week 17 looked great for him. I think that showed us a lot of what we should expect from this team moving forward, because you have McKinney, who finished the game with 8 tackles. He had an interception, another one that was called back, a couple, pass defended, and some really nice tackles. He had one that was on a wide receiver screen that he bursted through a tight end. A very size difference matchup there. He burst through a tight end, and he actually makes it a one-arm tackle on CeeDee Lamb, one of the most elusive slot receivers in the NFL. So, keep in mind, this is a defense that has young guys coming up. I think Julian Love did a really good job at cornerback. And all these different pieces, they re-signed Logan Ryan. I expect them to re-sign Leonard Williams, and hopefully they can find a way to keep Dalvin Tomlinson as well. But with that being said, you add a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, who has elite potential. It's just the injuries that are a major problem here. If you can get him for $5 to $7 million for 1 year, that's a steal. Because if he's healthy, you're talking about one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. When he is healthy and consistent. And if there's anybody who can get the most out of a player, it's Patrick Graham. We saw it. Look at Leonard Williams. We were all saying the same thing about Leonard Williams this last year. The sacks aren't there, the pressures aren't there, the production just isn't there. Like, where is the hidden production? Why is he so valuable? And this season we saw it. He had 62 pressures, which ranked 3rd in the NFL and among defensive linemen. And then you have the 11.5 sacks that, that's Patrick Graham. That's the scheme. That's what he's good at doing. Is it's good at developing and motivating these players to do a good job. And a guy like Clowney, who's kind of been bouncing around. He was in Houston, then he was in Seattle, now he's in Tennessee. Maybe he comes to New York and he's looking for a fresh start, and Patrick Graham's like, I'm going to whip this guy into shape, and he's going to turn into the number 1 overall pick from 2014. And you're looking at a guy who can really, really compete and offer plenty of value. So that's where my head is when it comes to Jadeveon Clowney. I'm not advocating for the signing of him, but I would understand if they could get him on a cheaper deal. It would make a ton of sense to me. Like I could really get behind that. if it was a cheap deal. Like, I'm not overpaying for him. We have a limited cap space to begin with. I'm not overpaying for him by any means. If he's willing to take a 1-year prove-it deal for $5 to $7 million, we can talk. Anything over that, not even a chance, and I'm not even considering it. Look, $13 million for 1 year. He did absolutely nothing. He got injured again. You cut that in half at that point. You're just halving those contracts because you can't depend on a guy who hasn't played a full season in over 2 years. So that's kind of where my head's at when it comes to Clowney. But the second guy I want to talk about, another really, really talented player, is Leonard Floyd. So Leonard Floyd is one guy that you probably remember from 2016. The Giants wanted to draft him, and the Chicago Bears leapfrogged the Giants and managed to secure Floyd, who is a very, very talented player. The tangibles are there too for him. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. He's a big, big guy. He's 28 years old, so he'll be 29 probably in about 6 months. But when you're looking at a guy like Floyd, he's a guy that also bounced around a little bit. He ended up with the Bears, and now he's with the Rams this year. He signed a 1-year deal for $10 million. So a 1-year, $10 million deal, that's somebody I would really, really consider, signing for the Giants because, just in terms of his production this year, and I want to read you some of his stats so you get an idea of what he's capable of doing. This season with the Rams, 10.5 sacks. That's his highest since 2016. He had 7 sacks. 10.5 is his highest, and that Rams defense is good, very impressive this year. And I think the Giants are a similar defense in terms of they use outside linebackers similarly. And I think he would actually play very, very good role with the Giants. He has 11 tackles for a loss, 19 quarterback hits, 55 combined tackles. He has a career low 8.3% missed tackle rate. He's been a stud this year, and he's really helping lead that pass rush for the Rams alongside Aaron Donald and some of those talented guys. But, it's the outside linebacker position that we need to be focusing on. The Giants don't need another big defensive end. They don't need another big defensive tackle. That's not what they use them for. Those big defensive tackles like Dalvin and Leonard Williams, they're meant to really soak up pressure, collapse the pocket, stop the run. You're not expecting them to win those one-on-one battles. They're soaking up double teams. You want them in the trenches specifically to soak up double teams. That is what you do in the NFL. Get double teams. That way you can open up the 1v1 battles for guys like Leonard Floyd or Debian Cloudy or Lorenzo Carter, whoever it might be. That's what the outside linebacker position is for. You're lining up outside the 5 technique. So the 5 technique would be at the tackle position, but you're lining up outside of that and you're standing. So it's really its own position in itself. And a guy like Floyd, who's extremely athletic, can drop back into coverage too. He has a pass defended this year. He really hasn't really dropped into coverage that much, but Patrick Graham likes to get those guys and have them drop back into zone coverage. We saw it with Carter Coughlin throughout the year, some of these veterans. So I think Leonard Floyd is a really, really fantastic option just because he seems to have grasped his play style. He really has grown with the Rams. And I think the reason he has grown with the Rams is because, one, it's a good fit at outside linebacker for him, and 2, having a very strong interior defense allows him to attack those 1v1 matchups with opposing tackles. The Giants do that. That is exactly their game plan. They asked, Dalvin Tomlinson, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, go out there, consume those interior defenders, or interior offensive linemen, and then have our outside linebackers attack from the edge. So I would love to see, the Giants maybe just tap him, see what he's asking for in free agency. I think he actually might be a little bit over our price range. He did sign a 1-year, $10 million deal. So now that he has a 10.5 sacks this year, he's a player the Giants probably won't be able to afford. If I had to imagine, he might be looking for a multi-year deal at this point. We're talking 3 years, maybe $15 million per season. So a 3-year, $45 million deal. The Giants could pull it off, but they'd probably have to let Dalvin Tomlinson walk. Because they do want to sign Leonard Williams. They're expecting him to be in about the $20 million range, right? So it really doesn't leave that much money for the Giants to begin with. And, it's important to know the cap space this year is going to be very strange. Dave Gettleman said during his press conference, they're saying the cap could land at $175 million, right? $175 million is a little bit worrisome to me personally, just because it's down from $198.2 million, so it's about $23 million difference. That's a massive cap drop-off, and that's all due to COVID-19, of course. That is a massive cap drop-off. That really hurts the Giants. That's Leonard Williams' contract right there. That's his contract. And you have to take away the $20 million, $23 million, right, off the top of that because, you were estimating it to be 198 million, probably going up this year without COVID, but now it's going down. So you really don't have much money to spend. But the way around that is you just backload the contract to the second year, right? So they did it with Logan Ryan, which is a pretty good example to use. His cap hit for next season, like 7.5 million, right? He signed a 3-year, $30 million deal, $31 million deal. So, that's kind of what they expect to do. They're going to backload to the second year. And the Giants, their contracts recently have been really, really smart, intelligent way of putting it together. They really don't want to put themselves in a position where, you have a 4 or 5 year deal like they did with Jerry Reese. When Jerry Reese tried to do, he was like, I need to save my job right now. So really the only thing I can do is sign guys like Olivier Vernon, Janoris Jenkins, Damon Snacks Harrison, 5-year contracts. You're killing yourself. He really thought they were going to pan out long term. Some of them did, some of them didn't. Obviously we traded away a couple of them, but at the end of the day, the 3-year deal is I think in the best interest of the team and the cap space, because what they're doing right now is they're essentially loading the cap into the beginning of it, and obviously due to COVID, they're going to try and push it the second year now. But the third year of the contracts are basically outs for the Giants. Low cap hits, high guarantees, spend the money up front, and then basically if, let's say, James Bradbury, who's one of our best players, let's say he didn't do well, he actually was a bust for us in a free agent signing, you could cut him after the second year with very, very minimal dead cap and move on and sign another player without much, to actually consume. So I think the way that they're actually formulating these contracts recently have been really, really good, which makes me think maybe they could find a way to sign a guy like Leonard Floyd, who might be in the $15 million range in terms of a pass rusher. But again, the Giants do have a first-round pick. They have the 11th overall pick, and that's going to be one to look at, whether it be a wide receiver or a guy like Gregory Rousseau from Miami. We're going to be doing all the draft analysis, of course, in the coming days, in the coming weeks, this offseason, doing a ton of stuff with some professionals, try to get some players on. We're going to be doing, reviews of the players this season. I really want to dive into Julian Love, see what he look like at cornerback, see, maybe what are we going to do there? What's the next steps at the second cornerback position, because that was a liability for us. But I wanted to run through Debian Cloudy and Leonard Floyd because those are two of the guys that could be a bit cheaper in terms of elite level talent. There's guys out there like Judon. You got Bud Dupree. You have plenty of players who are going to be demanding big money. And I just simply don't think the Giants are going to be willing to spend elite level pass rush money to get a guy. They'd probably rather draft somebody and then just put them right in, maybe a second rounder. But Jadeveon Clowney is a cheap person at this point in time after his injuries. Leonard Floyd, I think, fits the Giants mold perfectly. He basically is like Lorenzo Carter, but more talented and just better and healthy. That's a big thing. Health and availability is the number one thing. He hasn't missed a game in over 3 years. So keep that in mind. I think Leonard Floyd is somebody they could look at as a potential solution. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Of course, we're going to be doing tons more stuff, as I mentioned before. Wanted to run through Jadeveon Clowney and Leonard Floyd. Thought it'd be a cool idea and just see what you guys thought. Love to hear your opinions in the comment section on YouTube. If you're listening on audio via Spotify or iTunes, really appreciate the support. The views really help us and everything during this time of need. With COVID and everything, we really hope that we could provide you some quality content for you to consume and make your days a little bit more enjoyable. So as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one.